Hey guys, just wanted to drop in here at the head of the episode and give you a fair warning for this week's episode. A few weeks ago on Chapter X, Take the House, we had some audio issues. Full disclosure, using some new equipment to produce this show that is going to get us to a place where the show's produced really well once I fucking figure out how to do it. So a couple of weeks ago, that was computer error. This one was user error. Had to resort to using the backup. So as a result, don't have the level of control that I would like to have in the editing room. So audio levels are not really where they should be. Crosstalk is not really eliminated to the degree that it should be, but it's still a great episode and I still wanted to present it, and there wasn't really much I could do about it. So I hope that you'll stick with us for this week and bear with us for what's going to be a great episode. And then next week we'll be back to the level that we strive to produce for you guys every week. Thank you so much for listening in with us. Let's do the show.
We call ourselves the Elite.
Better than you, and you know it.
If not us, who? And if not now, when? We don't care about race or gender or sex or religion. If you're an elite athlete, we want you. Change the world.
We are going to change the whole universe!
This is what you call a paradigm shift.
He saw what wrestling was and realized what it could be.
All Elite Wrestling!
For the 12th time, it's Monday morning, and you know what that means. It's time for the next chapter of the only professional wrestling podcast that is changing the world every week. This is Seeing the Elite, an AEW podcast. I am your host, Bryce Reed. I am joined by my friend, my co-host, my tag team partner, Mr. Jonathan Davis.
How's it going, bud?
The world has changed once again. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Jonathan and I are two friends, fans, lovers of professional wrestling who are here every single Monday morning with all the latest news from All Elite Wrestling. A slow news week for us here at Seeing the Elite for the first time in a long time. Everybody's either on vacation or in Japan or fucking both, you know? So
kind of both, yeah. I mean, Cody's been and Brandy have been in Hawaii, and then now they're at Disneyland. So that's, you know, a good portion of the marketing team there. Who the fuck knows where the Bucks are? They're just, you know, MIA. Jericho's in Japan and all over the place, and Kenny's probably doing things.
The only wildly active member of the roster this past week has been Mox, who is
oh god, he's everywhere.
Who has wrestled in 2 high-profile matches since the last time we spoke to everybody here on Seeing the Elite. This is not a sports entertainment show. It's an entertaining sports show supported by fans like you from all over the world on YouTube, iTunes, I guess for a little bit while longer, Spotify and podcast services everywhere. Subscribe, review, give us 5 stars, just like Meltzer. It makes us feel so sweet. Jonathan, how sweet?
Makes us feel too sweet, buddy.
Too sweet.
Yeah, we're gonna have to change that soon.
Wow, the iTunes thing? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to be able to leave reviews on iTunes any longer, which is all the more incentive to go and do it now, because I don't know.
Before it changes to this new app that may or may not be on your computer by default.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. Oh, man. I mean, we talked before we started recording. It's like a net positive for music fans.
It's a net positive for Mac users.
It's definitely a net positive for Mac users, especially if you've been trying to use that program forever. And I think iOS users will benefit as well. But it is it's going to be hard for podcasts, right? Because podcasts were always on the iTunes app. Like podcasts sort of needed that to get going, needed that rub, right? Like, hey, it's in iTunes, which you already have. Like, check it out, right?
Yeah, just check out this new tab.
Podcasts don't need that anymore. They've become this whole other thing, that a lot of people listen to. But sectioning it off, you do still kind of go like, oh no, it's not in iTunes anymore. When really you should be like, who fucking cares? Nobody uses iTunes anymore anyway. But
not really anymore, no, because I mean, especially with the prevalence of streaming services, back in even 3 to 5 years ago, you used iTunes because you had to. If you had an iPhone, that's the only way you got your music on your phone.
Right.
Nowadays, with streaming services and everything, the only thing I really use iTunes for is, all the bootlegs I have.
Right. Like you and I would
on Spotify.
You and I would be considered
we're the minority in this.
Heavily disciplined music people, right? Yeah. But even I like iTunes used to be a whole thing, you get a CD and then you bring it home and you put it in your disk drive, and then you'd burn it into iTunes and rewrite the ID3 tags like 4 times because iTunes would delete them, and then and it used to be this whole thing, and like times have changed so much. I used to have hundreds and hundreds of CDs. Now I have 0 CDs, and I when I do get them, I don't bring them home and rip them in automatically. And when I do get things in like a download code with a vinyl or whatever, like I'm like, I'll type this in at some point and then add it to my iTunes library and then never listen to it on that source. I'll either listen to it on vinyl or on Spotify, right? So there's really, it's become this thing that has been habitually so much a part of my life that I still do it, but I don't really know why.
I think honestly, the last CD I actually bought was yours.
Yeah. Probably the last CD I bought too. Only I bought a lot more copies.
Yeah, it's a tremendous amount more. Yeah.
That's soniclibido.com. The music at the top and the end of the show. Sonic Libido. Soniclibido.com. I'm doing my best, Facebook.com/Seeing the Elite if you want to stay updated with us, or hit us on Twitter at Seeing the Elite. No G is here. No certified G's here. Just Seeing the Elite. Or join our Discord community, become a part of our clan over there, talk about wrestling as it happens. There was a wild chat that went on at fucking 4 a.m. this morning during Dominion for people who were up watching it. So
I read through that at 7 when I woke up.
Yeah, we're having a lot of fun over there. AEW fans and fans of this podcast from all over the world, and it's a great pleasure of doing this show that we get to have such an awesome community of friends over there, and it's the first place to hear basically all of the AEW news. A lot of this stuff shows up for me in Discord before it even hits Reddit, and I'm like, okay, here's what this is happening, and sort of add it to the document and stuff like that, and people discussing it, and it's great to hear everybody's thoughts on what's going on, even on a week like this week where not really a lot happened. But as always, Jonathan's going to have time codes if you can't, if you want to skip ahead to something that happens in this episode, that's where they're going to be in the description. Want to start
if I don't miss one or two like I did last week.
Whatever, man. Whatever. Want to start with a quote. I thought it was a bad idea when Hunter started buying the indies. You had Seth and me along with Joey Mercury, and we were able to sneak in a few key guys like Harper, Neville, and Cesaro. Once I was on the main roster and NXT started, which I wasn't a part of, every week Triple H was taking an Instagram selfie with some indie guy. I don't know if he was trying to make himself look cool and get some indie cred or what, or make NXT cool. He basically started buying the indies. I remember thinking that it might not be a good idea. Then where are all of these good ideas going to come from? If they had signed Daniel Bryan at 21, he never would have become Bryan Danielson, and you never would have had WrestleMania 30. If they signed Punk before he really became CM Punk, he never would have done what he did. If they signed me at 21, I never would have become anything good. I had to develop first before getting brought in. Buying up all the indie scene was the same as Vince buying up all the territories back in the day. There's nothing left to cherry pick for talent. It's amazing that even though they bought up the indies, it has repopulated itself stronger than ever. Makes you very optimistic about the future of pro wrestling. That's probably the biggest difference between my interview and the Punk interview. He was basically saying, fuck pro wrestling, and I was saying that I got my love of pro wrestling back. I wanted to wrestle everyone. Let's drop all the bridges, get all the companies together, and have a super show that sells out a stadium right now. Fuck it. The sum of wrestling outside of WWE is bigger than WWE. I feel like myself, the entire AEW roster and all of the fans are the same team, reaching for the same goal, to make wrestling awesome, to not be embarrassed to tell people you're a wrestling fan because they'd say to you, oh, that show with fart jokes and they poop on each other or whatever the fuck happens over there anymore. If you're a wrestling fan and you show some things from WWE, you'd be embarrassed. You'd want to bust out old VHS tapes to show them why you're a wrestling fan, because this isn't it. I want people to be wearing an AEW shirt and have someone say, oh, you're a wrestling fan? Fuck yeah, me too. When I was standing on that poker chip at the end of Double or Nothing, I didn't know when we were going to go off the air. I stayed up there a bit, but for some reason, I just wanted to take a fucking victory lap. Security did not appreciate it, but I took a giant victory lap around the arena off the air, and I felt like I was with 12,000 teammates. We are all AEW. We have that common bond. Really great, insightful words from John Moxley.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff to pick apart about that. The first thing that strikes me is that a lot of people don't realize that Roman, Seth, and Moxley, man, they weren't a part of the initial NXT. They had moved on when NXT really started.
Yeah.
Also reading through this, I feel bad for Luke Harper. I feel like that guy's got one of the biggest shaft by everything.
Man, I feel bad for a lot of people in that company. But
but everything he says is really true. You can't really have signed these guys at 21 years old. They needed that time to grow and figure shit out by themselves.
Well, I think more than that. Like people made a big deal about the chair, and we're going to talk more about the chair later. The throne, rather, right? The whole throne breaker thing.
People are still making a big deal about that.
Right, people are still making a big deal about it. But they're acting like it's the first shot in a war, and it's really not.
No, it's more about the sixth.
Right. I mean, beyond like what's done on TV, like the first shot was NXT buying the indies, like he says here. Yeah. Like buying all of this talent that they didn't even necessarily think they were going to use, didn't care if they were going to use it, really. All they cared about was, in a lot of these cases, like you can't tell me that they didn't buy Ricochet just so no one else could have him.
Absolutely. That's the only reason they bought Ricochet. They bought Ricochet because he was doing so well, and they didn't want him on New Japan and Lucha Underground anymore. Lucha Underground, while very, very niche show and for a very specific audience, scared them because it was so different. It was drawing people in by being so different. And then you had all of these talents on the cards and stuff that were like, whoa, these guys are really good. Who would have ever thought they were so good? Yeah. I thought they were just a bunch of Mexican guys.
Yeah. And I don't want to talk at length about WWE. NXT, I'm in a really weird place with NXT where, because it's like reading a story when you already know that the ending is everybody dies, right? Like it's very difficult for me to watch that show because I'm just like, why the fuck would I care that somebody's grabbing the brass ring in this company that's only just a feeder company for a company that's going to kill them when they get there? You know what I mean? So
I mean, even if you just look at the past like 3 years of the talent that they've bought and then won't be using, it's sad, dude. I mean, fucking Adam Cole is the prime example of that. That kid has so much fucking talent and would be the absolute top guy in AEW or really anywhere else in the world. Yeah. And he's going to go up to the main roster and be a jobber to fucking Roman Reigns
and they're
or Drew McIntyre.
So I guess that's the point I just wanted to make, is that this idea that they should, they shouldn't have done that, they should have just focused on our own product, although a lot of these people who are saying this shit are just WWE fanboys who act like they aren't. But acting like that's the first shot is completely ridiculous. As soon as they started as soon as they started buying more than just like Sami Zayn and shit like that, right? Like, then it became like, okay, they're trying to buy everybody so nobody else has it. And to Moxley's credit here, he does point out, hey, there's still a ton of talent in the underground scene.
Absolutely. I think to me, it's straight, like, it's when, Sami Zayn was a good point. It all makes sense. Nakamura going over absolutely made sense. He wanted to finish out his career by doing the thing he hadn't done.
Wasn't even an indie wrestler really at the time.
Yeah. But the ones who, it's when you started noticing that every, there's 5 like he said, there's 5 selfies on Instagram of Triple H with a new indie talent every single week.
Right. It's when it became like Keith Lee and stuff like that getting signed, where it was like, okay, the guy who just got hot last year and you're already buying this guy.
Keith Lee or Riddle. And it's just like, okay, why are you don't have a spot for this guy?
I mean, good for them if that's what they want, but and again, not trying to get too sidetracked with WWE talk, but it is interesting to think about, in this coming conflict, where the starting point is. And I think the starting point is probably a lot earlier than people realize it is.
I think so as well. And I feel, for people, like you said, it's good for them if that's what their goal was. But I feel like it's just because that's the way the industry has gone, whereas if you're not in WWE, you haven't made it.
That's the way it was. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes.
It definitely will, because we're in a completely different place now. So it's going to be real interesting the next couple of years of how the wrestling world shakes out.
I think AEW is a direct response to that, though. It's a direct response to that, and a direct response to this sort of the rise of the indies, and a lot of indies making a lot more money than they ever did. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, it's a response to, we're going to pay you $65,000 a year to be on NXT, but it's the only way to the top and you don't have a fucking choice. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that certain people who are within All Elite Wrestling now were given that deal.
Absolutely.
People who had a say. I mean, the Young Bucks were offered quote unquote millions of dollars or whatever, right? But I bet their deal was a lot more insulting than that.
I would absolutely agree with that. Going back to the interview, just things that Moxley said. Like Punk said, he was basically fuck pro wrestling because he was in WWE, he got jaded by it, and that's all fine. The way reading this and having heard Moxley say it, it's him and Cody had the same path right there. They both got fed up with how things were going. They both left, and they both hit the indie scene and just exploded because people wanted to see them unchained.
Well, sure, but Moxley's in a better position than any of them were. Punk was honestly in the worst position, because when Punk left, it was 2014, and that was sort of the beginning of the indies bubbling up, but it certainly wasn't even like it was when Cody left.
I mean, and now Cody was still a gigantic question mark of okay, what's he actually going to do? Is he actually going to come out here and do something, or is he just bullshitting and then, biding his time until he goes back?
Punk essentially had one option if he wanted to continue pro wrestling, which he ultimately decided he didn't, and that would have been New Japan. Would have been basically the only option that would have been big enough for him, because I know, or at least I don't know, but it was rumored at one point that he did make an offer to PWG to come in on a Mystery Vortex or something like that, and was ultimately turned down because of the attention. It would have brought too much attention to PWG, because basically, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but I imagine the feeling at the time was anywhere that you show up this soon after leaving WWE the way that you did, you're going to war with WWE. Like, no matter, right? Like, suddenly it's PWG versus WWE, and they knew that they had not the resources to make that happen.
I mean, to be honest with you, if even without the going to war aspect, if Punk had shown up to PWG, it would have killed them because they would never have been able to support that in crowd sense, because that would have killed that promotion, because they are very much set on just being a very small promotion, even though they're wildly popular, but it's still very small and niche. They cannot afford to do these AEW-esque shows or ROH shows. It's not in the books for them, and that's not something they ever really want to do. They like staying small and doing crazy off-the-wall shit.
AEW is the first American company that could really have contained him, but they weren't there at the time, so he walked out and there was nothing. And then Cody walked out, and he did legitimately do the small indies. I saw him at a show with fucking 500 people at it.
Yeah.
And did New Japan, and that infrastructure was better for him. Mox literally walked out of fucking WWE right into a company with almost as much money to put behind him, right? Like, that's unprecedented. It not only wasn't an unprecedented thing for him to do, it was an unprecedented environment to even have the option.
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's unprecedented, but it's been unprecedented for about the past 25 years.
Right.
Early 90s, if you walked out of WWE, you walked right into WCW and you got the same or better contract.
At the same time, if we're talking about 25 years, like, think about how much the world has changed in 25 years, right? Like,
absolutely, that's fair.
It's not just the business of pro wrestling. Literally everything has changed in the way that we live our lives. So, 25 years ago, we were watching shit on VHS tapes and shit like that, right? So, it
was before we found out how DVDs work from the aliens.
Dial up modems and shit like that, right? So,
internet wasn't widespread.
A little bit of a different time for everybody.
Yeah, that's fair.
Let's break down Being the Elite, episode 155. This episode is live. The episode opens with Matt and Nick Jackson standing side by side. Matt thrusts his fist forward. Nick excitedly rubs his hands together and thrusts his fist forward next to Matt's. Both men look expectantly to their left as the camera rotates Jon Moxley into frame. Mox stands there stunned. He can't get away from it, right? Never. He exits without saying a word. Matt and Nick awkwardly lower their hands as we cut to the title screen.
Oh man, that was so good. I mean, you get within the first 2 seconds of them just standing there like that, you knew what was going to happen, but you were still waiting to see what Moxley's reaction would be to this, because it was either going to be he's going to do it and he's going to just look at them with shame, or he's just going to look at them with shame.
I loved it. I thought it was one of the best the best jokes I've seen on the show in a long time.
Absolutely agree, man. It was so funny.
Out of the title sequence, Matt and Nick sit in adjacent rocking chairs. Between them sits a Cracker Barrel, which presents their AAA tag titles for the whole world to see. Matt says, "God, what a beautiful day here in Southern California. SCU." Dana enters the frame and asks the Bucks if they want to talk about how friendly they got with Mox at Double or Nothing. The Bucks are confused. They think that Mox is a pretty cool guy. Dana reminds the Bucks that Mox attacked Kenny at the end of the show. There's a great line from Matt where he says, "No, he didn't. We were in Gorilla. We watched his big debut. We popped. We celebrated. We ate red vines. And that was the end of it." And I love that they mentioned the red vines, which you would have to have watched last week just to catch that there were headlines in the background everywhere. Dana says he killed Kenny on stage. I don't know what you guys didn't see. There's an awkward silence as Dana exits. Matt asks Nick if he can cut the cold open that they filmed and they'll make a new one. And Nick says he can't cut it because the episode is already live. They then sit awkwardly for a very long time. Moments pass as they sit. Matt says,
great, dude. Just like, okay, we're just going just absolutely bonkers awkward with this. That's fine.
It's just full meta too. Like where it's live. The episodes are live now. Matt says he's not going to see that. Nick says he probably will. And Matt says we're screwed, you know? It's just it's a very, very strange joke idea, but I thought it was funny.
It was a great open for them, man. It was just something completely different that they tried out. I love that they still had the Cracker Barrel sitting with them. But yeah, it was just, you know, new things. They're trying new shit out. This was a fun cold open.
Yeah,
I'm down for it, man.
There's a short promo for Fyter Fest tickets after this. And then there's a funny camera scene from the MGM Grand with the librarians using like the nicer cameras that they had on the night. The two librarians, Pretty Peter Avalon and Leva Bates, encounter each other and do a quick sort of mirror mime, you know, Bugs Bunny style. And then they turn to exit. Both of them turn back for a shush at the same time, and they exit. Not terribly different from what they did on Double or Nothing, but it was.
It's still fun.
It was just a bit of fun, you know, which is literally the whole point of this fucking show.
It's a good thing to me because I feel like they need to be doing this as much as we can because you need to build that feud up if you're going to build that feud up.
Yeah. Next is a Cool Runnings inspired workout montage with Jabali ahead of his match with Michael Nakazawa at Fyter Fest. By which I mean, you know, it's like he'd be doing push-ups and then the camera would pan out and he's doing them girly style, or like he's doing pull-ups and then the camera would pan out and you could see that like his feet were touching the floor. You know, like a lot of just like sort of fake outs with how they're doing, how he's doing exercises. It looks like they're hard and then they're a lot easier. And I thought that was kind of cool, kind of a reference to that film, which I'm sure they've all seen a number of times.
Probably one of the things that they just watched over and over again when they were kids.
I mean, if they, with as many Space Jam references as they make, they've definitely seen Cool Runnings.
It's almost like these guys are fucking nerds.
Now here's Luchasaurus with the historical question of the day. He says, what are the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution? Jungle Boy, who is perched upon Luchasaurus's shoulders, covered in flags, hands a copy of the Bill of Rights to Luchasaurus. Luchasaurus says, very good, Jungle Boy. It's the Bill of Rights. As a bonus question, Luchasaurus asks, in what year did America gain its independence? Rick Knox says 1776, Jungle Boy. Luchasaurus says, actually, it was July 4th, 1993, when Lex Luger slammed Yokozuna aboard the USS Intrepid. I
laughed so much at this, and it was so fucking great, man.
So I'm young enough. I was born in 1992, okay? This happened in 93, and my blood father, not a wrestling fan. So, I had to go and look up this event.
I remember this.
Okay.
You know, when I was a lot younger, the paper, my uncle at before he died, he ordered every single WCW pay-per-view. That's who got me into wrestling. My dad and two of his brothers were always big wrestling fans, so we would go over to his house on Sundays and watch the WCW pay-per-views. So I remember this match. It was insane to see Yokozuna getting slammed that hard. He's a big old dude.
It was an event. Yeah, it was a WCW pay-per-view held on top of an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was not something you really expected to see because WCW did dumb, crazy shit like that. But it was really, it was a cool thing to see. That touching history like that was great for me, but also just how fucking silly this whole segment was.
I love the idea that Luchasaurus has this master's degree where history
is also wrestling.
Right, where the idea that he would give out history lessons where wrestling kayfabe also counts as history.
Yeah.
Because he's a wrestling character, right? So it would to that character.
He's just teaching Jungle Boy.
Right. Rick Knox has no time for this nonsense. He quickly corrects Luchasaurus, and Luchasaurus puts on his spectacles and reminds everyone that he has a master's degree. And Rick Knox has nothing to say to this.
Nothing at all, man. I'll be honest with you, man. I really hope that Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy become a tag team because I think it's fucking amazing. Especially since, they announced that Luchasaurus was a part of AEW pretty recently, the past week or two. So yeah. I'm even more down for it.
Yeah, man. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a funny idea, and I hope they expand on it.
I hope if this takes the place of the fucking Joey Ryan bullshit, aces, man.
He doesn't work there anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
BTE mailbag. Richie Rich 97 on Twitter asked Scorpio Sky, whose idea come up with the name SCU? And Scorpio, to his credit, avoids the easy joke there. He's just like, we all know what he meant. I would love this if this fucking segment just turned into strong bad emails, though.
I'd be fine with that.
If fucking MJF comes out on the segment and just shits on people for writing it, you know what I mean? Because you could do it with it. Whose idea come up the name SCU?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would just, I would just pop so hard for that.
I would too, man. It'd be hilarious, but man, this one was a little off, but I enjoyed, learning about the SCU thing. That was fun to me, but it was still.
Well, Scorpio doesn't really know how to speak naturally to a camera yet. There's something about him that he doesn't have that down yet. Like you can feel the anxiety in him when he's talking to the camera, and you can just sense that as a viewer. Scorpio Sky says that SCU was Nick Jackson's idea on a car ride. CD hated the idea because of the website of the same name, which we've mentioned before. So it is good to know that website was there before the name and is the influence for the name.
Which is funny because we had talked about that and we were both just like, yeah, I don't know how they came up with the name, but that's websites there.
We both mentioned that it was weird. Because of the website of the same name, CD hated it. Nick persisted and shot down any alternative with a Howard Finkel impression. Eventually, with the website's permission, CD gave in, and the rest is history. Next, a fan asked Brandon Cutler how it felt to be offered 2 contracts and to be the first person to walk down an AEW ramp all in 1 week. He answers the way anyone would, having just had all their dreams come true in the span of a week. It turns out he enjoyed it. More than that, I mean, how many times does this guy have to say that he's thankful? You know what I mean? But
yeah, that was kind of the weird part to me is what else do you guys want him to say?
Yeah. How did it feel getting offered 2 contracts to work for this company? So now you have a job, you can feed your family and stuff, and you were the first ever wrestler to walk down. How did it feel? Good.
Fucking awesome. Yeah, it was so strange of how this whole thing went down. I mean, I know I don't mind the BTE mailbag. I think it's a good thing, and they can do some fun stuff with this, but they're gonna have to curate these questions a little bit better. And this week especially made that more prevalent of guys, come on.
Maybe they just didn't get any good ones. Fruit. Yeah.
But it's just, yeah.
Next, back at the rocking chairs, Matt and Nick thank Cracker Barrel for the Double or Nothing catering while holding up a giant branded inflatable chicken wing. which is fine, but that's literally all that happens in the segment is they think.
It's giving me good hope that we're going to have some tasty food for Fight for the Fallen Man.
Maybe. Is there a Cracker Barrel in town? There must be.
Oh, God damn it. No,
I don't want. Hold on, though. If I'm going to Florida for a few days, I don't want to go to a fucking. We'll go to a Cracker Barrel when we go to Chicago.
I don't know if they're in Chicago.
Oh, God damn it.
That's why I'm looking it up.
Cut to Joey Ryan in the gym lifting some 5-pound dumbbells. In walks the salt of the earth, M to the J to the F. MJF does his thing, calls Joey Rick Rude if he was a backyarder. Then says the blonde girl.
The fucking line of the episode, dude.
He then says that the blonde girl could probably lift way more weight. As he exits, MJF says, God, what a fucking nerd. Joey sits up. He says, man, I'm getting bullied and I don't even work there. It was great. And then they cut to the footage of Joey saying he's staying on the indies from bar wrestling, which we talked about last week. But it is interesting to see it here. His delivery on it, not great, but it's Joey Ryan, so that's how it is.
That's what you expect from a Joey Ryan promo.
Yeah. Just weird. He's got a very weird style. Did you find out where Cracker Barrel is?
There are some in around Chicago.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how close they will be to us, since we will probably have no car.
Whatever, man. Whatever. You got to ruin everything,
Yeah, I do. Let's see now. Now let's try Jacksonville, dickhead. Oh, I bet there's a lot in Jacksonville.
Probably a lot.
Fucking right, there are.
Can I get alligator at the fucking Cracker Barrel? It's probably gross, right?
Motherfucker, we need breakfast.
Do we?
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, when Shane and Sean and I went to Las Vegas, we had a box of Pop-Tarts, and that was breakfast every single day.
Okay,
because
well, fine.
Vegas,
you and Sean can just
because
piss off.
Vegas is so expensive food-wise.
That's fair. That is
literally $30 a meal. And
you're going to the buffet every time.
No, even then, even if you went and sat in a restaurant, it was $30 fucking every time. No matter where you went. We went to a fucking Benihana, it was $30. So
it's fucking Benihana. What do you expect?
the only meal that we had that was less than $30 was fucking In-N-Out, and that was way off the strip. Yeah, so okay. We were like, if we can...
Sean can go fuck off. Carissa and I are going to go to Cracker Barrel, get a nice breakfast.
Okay, well, having never been to a Cracker Barrel, I don't even know if they serve that or not. So...
They serve breakfast all day. It's kind of like Waffle House. Have you been to Waffle House?
No, we don't have Waffle House up here either, dude.
Roy
Rogers.
I don't know what the fuck Roy Rogers is, but yeah, you guys got to go to Waffle House. That's an institution.
Okay. Is it better than an IHOP or worse? It's an audio podcast, Jonathan. You can't make signs at me.
They're kind of equivalent, but you can't get pancakes.
Oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't want pancakes at a Waffle House anyway. Next is another rather confusing scene from SCU. CD asks Kazarian to retell a story when he's interrupted by a call from Shima. A long, unsub Japanese conversation ensues. JD, you're a weeb.
Fuck right off.
Any translation on what went down here?
Yeah, I got a little bit of it. There was a couple pieces I missed. So he starts off, hello, Shima, good morning, how are you? And then I didn't know that next one. And then, hold on. And then there was some more things I didn't know. And it was yes, and then goodbye. So what I'm assuming...
Very helpful translation, thank you.
What I'm assuming is what I missed is yeah, it's also one side of the conversation, so it's also...
Sure.
Basically, yeah, do you want to do a match with me? Or hold on, what do you mean you want to do a match? Things like that.
Yeah,
but it's
CD hangs...
After the whole conversation was better anyways.
CD hangs up and says that that was Shima. He wants another match. Kazarian, who's excited, says, SCU versus Strong Hearts again? Dude, that match was awesome. I have no problem. cut off by CD, who says, no, Shima doesn't want a rematch. He wants a singles match with me, being Christopher Daniels.
Yes.
Kaz says, what else did he say? And CD says, I don't know, man. I don't speak Japanese. So I don't really understand this joke. It seems pretty similar to the South American joke that he did a couple weeks ago, which seems just like an opportunity for him to like flex that he knows multiple languages.
I think it's that. I think it's also probably just a more long-standing joke from BTE that we just aren't picking up.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it goes way back with him knowing how to speak other languages, but thinking that he doesn't, or something like that. I just
thought it was funny that he just went into this whole Japanese thing. It was actually speaking good Japanese, not like the Spanish he did a couple weeks ago. Right. And then he's like, what are you talking about? I don't speak Japanese.
Yeah, maybe I'm just thinking too much into it. Maybe because I'm assuming that it's not really stupid, and maybe it's just a really stupid joke.
Or both.
I want to move into this. That's the end of the episode. Kind of a short, being the Elite. Again, everybody's on vacation. They're like they haven't been able to shoot anything. Unless Cody's shooting a bunch of stuff down at the fucking Star Wars theme park or whatever.
I don't think he can.
Oh, can you not? I guess maybe because they're promotional thing, you can't have cameras.
Yeah, since it's in preview right now, I'm imagining that you really can't show too much of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to see anyone get super kicked on the Millennium Falcon.
No. As great as it would be.
Maybe, though. We could always hope.
Once they step out of Galaxy's Edge, yeah, Joey Ryan's probably going to get shit whipped, but it'll be okay.
We do have a Buyrate update from Big Dave, though. This is from Wrestling Observer. Do they still call it live? I guess it's something else now.
Yeah, WOL.
Yeah, their podcast. He said, basically, we have a bunch of figures from a number of different markets that represent a solid percentage of national buys through one of the bigger cable systems. These numbers I'm giving are estimates, but they are more than solid enough numbers that we can extrapolate numbers from. These numbers would be in the range of accurate and what I'd consider excellent estimates, but they are still estimates. At this point, Double or Nothing is estimated somewhere between 98,500 and 113,000 buys worldwide, which is quite a bit bigger than what we'd reported last week. Editors note. Last week
it's the top end, yeah.
The top end, yes. The low end is about what we'd
right,
said.
That's what we knew last week. It's all great stuff for me, man. I think they lowballed the estimates Dave did last week because he just really wasn't sure. And
that's what you want to do. You want to lowball, and then you can only impress by going further, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As well as, he knew he was going to get shit from so many people, no matter what the numbers were, unless they were just like fucking UFC numbers.
Sure.
So he just I think the estimates I've seen is this, and it's all great numbers, man. These are wonderful for a first-time pay-per-view.
These are even better numbers than they were already great. These are even better numbers.
Yeah.
The best estimate has U.S. pay-per-view buys at around 71,000 with almost an exact 50-50 split between television and Bleacher Report Live. That's notable because nobody does a 50-50 split. The biggest split that I've heard of for a television pay-per-view and streaming was Conor McGregor versus Khabib
Nurmagomedov.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. Which was an 80-20 split in favor of television. It's usually closer to 85-15. So the 50-50 split is like super notable.
It is, but there's a little bit of a caveat with that especially for that UFC match, in that UFC Fight Pass is ass. And even when it's, as long as it's been around, they have really not promoted it very well, that you can order the pay-per-views through this app as well. It's always still been get on your TV provider and order the pay-per-view. And it's like, so as much as it is jarring to see that it's a 50-50 split, that's also UFC's fault.
Yes, I agree with that. And I'm
Not
sure
taking
that that's
anything away. I'm just,
I'm sure that's being factored into what people are looking at, but I think the bigger thing here that would and not knowing anything about the people who actually look at these numbers, but I think the big impression that they would make is that the people who are ordering this pay-per-view are people who don't have cable. And the demographic of people that don't have cable in this country are 18 to 20, 18 to 35-year-olds, right? Which is the demographic that this company is aiming for, definitely, but really the demographic that everybody aims for. So this can only really be seen as a positive that they did this kind of streaming numbers, because that's where the industry kind of wants to go with some of that stuff. And when you see that kind of internet number, you're like, okay, there's a lot of kids watching.
Right. That's the good thing about this, is that this is exactly the thing. There's an old Simpsons quote that I thought about as I was reading through this. Is like, Homer's walking through and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm between ages 18 and 35. Everyone listens to me." Or yeah, male. And so it's like, yeah, you nailed your demographic of who with the 50-50 split. That's exactly what you need to be doing. You've done your job essentially.
Right.
The buy rate being at 71K ish for the US is also exactly what I expect, given the timing with the time zones and stuff.
Correct. Yeah, like
sense.
Every other almost every other country, like it was kind of an inconvenient time for people.
Yeah. So the little bit of the surprising thing to me is the UK side. That's a little bit more surprising.
Yeah, let me finish it out. Quote.
Yeah.
What's also notable is that in the UK, the split was closer to 75-25 in favor of television. But in the UK, the heavy marketing was on ITV4 for ITV box office, and there wasn't really much of a push for streaming pay-per-view. But still, a solid percentage of it did get streaming.
Yeah, so that kind of makes me think that a good portion of the streaming percentage here was word of mouth via the internet versus actual, promotional materials, which is fine. That's exactly also what you expect. It's still a little bit surprising to me that given the time zone differences, that there was a bigger split towards television versus streaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the thing about that is we don't know what the replay schedule was. They could have replayed like primetime or some shit.
Yeah, we don't know. I remember hearing buzzings about what the replay schedule was for the UK, but I really don't know anything about it. Not enough that I would want to talk about it. Another big thing that happened this week, Dustin Rhodes was on Talk Is Jericho. Not really going to talk a lot about it. Mostly WWE stuff. Talked about the Backlot Brawl and Goldust as a character. Sort of the biggest eye opener for AEW fans, or people kind of keeping an eye on AEW versus WWE as we're heading into this, was both Dustin and Jericho talked
extensively,
really kind of remorsefully about how much Vince has changed as a creator since the Attitude Era. And you can see,
not
because
just that, but like they kept going back to that too.
Yeah. And I mean, this is not like rocket science, right? Like, in order for your product to change as much as it has, your creative process has to change.
Sure.
So, but you could hear both of them talking about like, hey, I remember the days when Vince would be in Gorilla and you would just be like, hey, I have this idea. Give me 5 minutes. And he'd be like, all right, go out there, and he's like, and it's not like that anymore.
That was a striking comment to me. The other striking one was Dustin saying, he's like, yeah, I remember the days when Vince was happy all the time.
Yeah.
That's what really stuck out to me. Overall, the episode was really great if you're curious about Dustin, because Jericho did a really good interview here.
That was a great interview,
where they talked a lot about his life and stuff, as well as just AEW. So it was a really good episode. But yeah, that comment there was really
heartbreaking.
It really was.
You know that your friend's not in a good place when people remorse about like, hey, remember when he was happy all the time?
Yeah. And especially for like Dustin and Jericho, who have known Vince for 20, 30 years. Like, You can tell that they're just sad that because he was their boss, but he was also their friend for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it's just when you see your friend not being happy, it sucks, man.
Yeah. A lot of reports coming out about that. It's not in the document, but people talking about how a lot of people backstage like listen to Moxley's interview and were like, like he's not wrong. And I'm
sure we'll see the same things coming out this week.
One source even said that Vince is aware that these are issues and things like that, although everything I've heard about Vince doesn't paint him as a terribly self-aware individual. But
no, he's very insulated with his inner circle, and I'm sure they've brought it up, but I'm sure they are, again, being very insulated with this.
Yeah. Jon Moxley beats Juice Robinson, wins IWGP US title in New Japan Pro Wrestling debut match at Boss J. Mike Chiari for Bleacher Report sends us this one. Thank you, Mike. In his first match since leaving WWE, Jon Moxley defeated Juice Robinson at the Best of Super Juniors finals at Ryoka. Do it, Jonathan.
Ryogoku Koku Gikan
Hall in Tokyo on a Wednesday to win New Japan Pro Wrestling's IWGP United States Championship. Jonathan, you're an asset to this podcast. Don't let anybody ever tell you that.
But then you just keep calling me a fucking weeb all the time.
It's important. It's a skill, okay? Moxley took the fight to Robinson from start to finish and ended the match with a modified version of the Dirty Deeds DDT finisher. That is worth seeing. He has like a super version of the DDT now, and it looks awesome.
Is it different than the one he did to Kenny?
No. Yes, I think so.
No,
I think so. It's like a lifted version.
Okay, because I know he did it to Kenny and pretty much everybody in the ring, but I wasn't sure. I haven't got to watch this match yet, so
right. So he has the regular version of the DDT, and then this new version that he's doing is like he lifts him up in the air and then drops him on it. It looks fucking nasty.
That is still nameless as of yet.
Sure. Does it need a name? Do finishers need names? Yes, they do.
Yes. Yes.
With the win, he became just the fifth different man to hold the IWGP US title since its inception in 2017.
Yeah, I know Cody was the first, I believe.
Maybe Kenny? No? Huh. While Moxley entered through the crowd, much like he did as a member of The Shield in WWE, he had a decidedly different look and feel. The former WWE champion ditched his jeans and tank top in favor of a more traditional look as he rocked biker shorts during the bout. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. He wore these black knee pads, black sort of Medi boots, Medi-length boots, and these sort of like biker shorts with a little touch of white barbed wire design on them.
My bad.
And about what? About Kenny?
Yeah, Kenny was the inaugural one. Then Jay White, then Juice, and then Cody took it from Juice. That was
Suck it, JD. Put it on the board. Yeah, I don't know if any. Jonathan, you haven't seen this match yet?
No, I haven't. It's like on my to-do list of things to watch. That as well as the Jericho Okada match. Mainly, I was just waiting for both of them to happen so I could just watch everything together. But I did watch somebody posted a short video of the ending of it, and the ending was really, really cool.
Yeah, it's cool, man.
So I'm really down for this. I enjoy his new gear as opposed to the stupid ass jeans and a t-shirt kind of thing. I've always hated that sort of thing. I
imagine his AEW gear will be different. This seems like if
he got off a flight and he didn't have any gear.
No, it didn't seem like that as much as it seemed like if you're playing for the symphony, you wear a suit. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like it seemed like he's in New Japan, so he has this very sports centric gear, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Whereas I imagine in AEW, he might wear something closer to.
I still don't think he's going to be in that jeans and a cut off t-shirt bullshit, though.
No, No, but I would imagine it would be something closer to the pants that he was wearing at Double or Nothing or something like that, right?
Yeah. I've watched older matches where he was in the Shield gear, which is cool, that like military-esque stuff.
Right.
But when I first started seeing Moxley in WWE, he'd already switched over to the jeans and T-shirt kind of thing, and that's, as someone who's watched wrestling for as long as I have, that's something I've always hated, because you're not okay. You just walked off the street and they put you in a ring. Good for you. I hated it with fucking Cena, where he's just wearing the fucking blue jean shorts all the goddamn time. It's like, dude.
Hey, every now and then he'd wear cargo shorts. Okay.
Well, if you're gonna be a wrestler, just it's a uniform. It's and it's something that's sports oriented in my brain. There is a uniform tied to wrestling, and clothes that I could be wearing are not that uniform.
Sure. Moxley, I already read that one. He was also far more vicious than he's usually portrayed in the WWE. Although this match was a basic singles bout, he used tables and chairs, and he even busted Robinson open with a harkened kick, which harkened back to his indie days prior to WWE.
That's also surprising, because typically New Japan, they do not like you using chairs and tables.
Yeah, unless you're famous, because like fucking Jericho did the same thing during his match.
Jericho did. I think Kenny was actually the first one who actually got to use tables.
And so he like bites Robinson on the head like a bunch during this match and shit. Like, this is pretty gnarly.
Iron Mike?
Huh?
Iron Mike?
No, he didn't bite his ear off. He just bites him on the head.
Maybe that's what they talked about after Double or Nothing.
Hey, I got this great maneuver for you. I guess it'll be higher. Yeah, this great maneuver for you.
Well, we're going to hell.
With the victory, Moxley ended Robinson's 150-plus day run with the title. He has some added ammunition for his upcoming feud against Kenny Omega. Go and check out their post-match interviews with Juice Robinson and Moxley. They're fantastic. On YouTube or whatever. Moxley attacked Omega to conclude All Elite Wrestling's Double or Nothing pay-per-view in his debut for the company, and it seemed likely that they will clash on August 31st. Moxley has bragging rights over Omega currently, since he now holds the title his rival first won in 2017 before dropping it to Jay White. While Moxley is set to work full-time for AEW when its weekly show begins airing on TNT later this year, his win at the Best of the Super Juniors finals suggests that he will be utilized as a top star for as long as New Japan has him. Dream matches against Hiroshi Tanahashi, Okada, Ibushi, Naito, Ishii, and Suzuki are all possible in the coming months, but Moxley's next focus is on his first AEW match against Joey Janela at Fyter Fest on June 29th.
Yeah, that's gonna be a goddamn bloodbath.
Moxley went on to face Shota Umino at Dominion last night, whom he quickly pinned with the double underhook DDT, Dirty Deeds as people know it. Moxley then announced that he wants in on the G1 tournament. So we do know that Moxley will be a member of the G1 tournament, which will be interesting because his competition in which means he may or may not be booked for certain AEW events because of the timing. So we'll have to see how that all shakes out.
At least for the next 2 to 3 events, mainly. After because the G1 is like a 5 to 6 week tournament, but it's primarily focused in July, which is when Fyter Fest is, or not Fyter Fest, Fight for the Fallen, but they will have finished everything out by the time All Out happens, and then of course by the time TV happens. I'm sure I think Moxley will do a couple after the G1. He'll probably do Wrestle Kingdom, and then that'll probably be it for him in New Japan.
Wasn't Wrestle Kingdom in January?
Yeah, but they could, since it's not aired technically here.
Maybe. I don't think they'll have him that long.
Play around with that.
I don't think they'll have him that long. I think he'll be out by then. I think that's just how it is. Like, I think by the time they hit them where they're doing TV, like, he's not going to.
Yeah, that may be true. I mean, Yeah, he could be out by October. I think the absolute latest he would be is going to be Wrestle Kingdom, though.
Sure. Later that night, or rather this morning, Jericho faced Okada for the IWGP Championship, which was a decent match. Jericho came up short after Okada sat down on a very messy sunset flip for the 3 count. Kind of a botched ending, unfortunately.
Some Japanese fans that were asking for their money back after that match.
Well, yeah, because they did the match and then they also didn't do like a farewell promo or something like that, which they typically do. Jericho did like a beatdown on Okada. He was stopped by Tanahashi. It looks like that might be sort of the next fight for Jericho is with Tanahashi. And but yeah, the Japanese fans booed very loudly, which is very unusual for them.
Never happens. Japanese fans are some of the most respectful in pro wrestling, period. If they're booing, they're pissed.
Yeah, they weren't happy. But I did think that a lot of it was like for reasons they intended, you know?
I think that it was the result that they wanted, but it was just so strange of people seeing that reaction out of a Japanese crowd.
Yeah. I think that there are, like that's the problem is when you see people like booing a WWE event very loudly or whatever.
That's just normal.
It's only awkward when like you can tell like that's not what they were trying to do. It's not really. I didn't think it was awkward watching this event because like they ended on a heel promo, and shit, like they were. That's what the reaction that they were looking for. Whether or not it was unusual for Japan or whatever, maybe it's just a testament to Jericho being like, "Oh, you guys never do this? Well, let's do it."
It could very well be. Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting to me hearing that. Like, whoa, man, I'd never heard of Japanese fans booing anything.
Yeah. AEW's YouTube released 10 minutes of post-air footage from Double or Nothing this week, including Mox's victory lap that he mentioned earlier, and the speeches from the Elite. I'd love to see a home video release of with the road to Double or Nothing and then a sort of long cut of Double or Nothing. But I don't think they'll do it because I think those days are over now, unfortunately.
Maybe not. I mean, they may be doing it like a print to demand kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, the DVDs and Blu-rays were really only ever a profitable, decent idea when you knew you could sell a bunch of them and didn't do print to demand. Print to demand, I don't think ever became something that was worth keeping around, just because it takes so much to replicate those things that like doing it to order, like your margins are so thin at that point that it's like
that's fair. Yeah. You know, it was nice seeing this because it was good to have a better quality version of that promo that they had at the end that we talked about.
Better, but not great, because like Kenny's mic is really weird at the end and shit.
Yeah, that was weird. But it was nice to see. I enjoyed it. The Mox's victory lap was great. I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, man, it was cool to see. Mox is in the G1. Jericho is apparently still just wrestling. I think it's a shame he didn't win the IWGP title. I think that would have been awesome for both companies, but New Japan still seems pretty rooted in their relationship with Ring of Honor Wrestling. They're
also trying to not do a part-timer has our biggest belt.
Sure.
And Jericho in New Japan is the perfect definition of a part-timer. They can bring him in for really good matches.
They can bring him in for okay matches. This match was okay.
No, well, I mean, the bigger event matches, they're not going to put the belt on him where he would need to be in Japan for 6 weeks.
Well, with their schedule, not really 6 weeks, but yes.
Yeah.
I also think it's unfortunate that having now seen him try to use it in a couple of matches or use it to certain degrees in different matches, the Judas effect is not a great finishing move.
It's not. There is actually a reason why they don't do that in UFC. It's a very hard move to pull because of how close you have to be. And when you have to not only throw the move, but then you have to pull it so that you're not legitimately breaking someone's nose, because that's usually how you would use that move. I chalked it up at Double or Nothing of like he's really pulling it hard because Kenny already had a broken nose.
Right.
But yeah, I watched the finish of this because someone had posted it online, but it's like this was there's like a spinning back elbow is not a wrestling move. You cannot throw this as a wrestling move without it being a shoot, because you can't pull it.
It looked fine. Okada actually made it look good. It doesn't work for a lot of other reasons for me.
That's fair.
For most notably, it is how close that you have to be. It is that the idea happens with like no fanfare. It just sort of happens, and you can be like, "Oh, it's like an out of nowhere move," but it's like, not really.
No.
When you have to be that close to him, and it's not as flashy as a cutter is, right? Where you can see the impact or anything like that. It just sort of happens, and it's a strike. Strikes as finishers. The only time it works is when you have a ton of buildup to it. Like, because otherwise it's like, why doesn't he just spinning back elbow all the time? Now, the obvious answer is because when you do a spinning back elbow, you show your back to your opponent for enough time that they could take advantage of it, right? Which is a problem with the move to begin with. But it's almost like when Big Show was doing that punch as a finisher, right? And you're like, well, why doesn't he just fucking punch all the fucking time then?
That one made less sense because it was also just like your fist is as big as a literal ham.
Right.
Just punch everyone.
Just punch. If you're going to bring into this that your fists are so big that there are knockout punches every time you throw a punch, why wouldn't you just constantly punch people, right? Yes. If your finisher is a spinning back elbow, why wouldn't you just stand in the middle of the ring and fucking spin? You know what I mean? Like,
that's kind of the weird thing with this one is like. That's why it doesn't work. The reason like a spinning back fist in UFC works is because you're doing it lightning fast.
Right.
To make this look good in wrestling with the elbow, A, you have to be so close, but B, you have to slow it down to make it, telegraphed to so that it looks impactful. But when you slow it down, it looks fucking dumb.
Well, and strikes when they're that fast, like it's really difficult to get the drama that you need on a move that moves that fast. Like that's the reason why Shawn Michaels, in order to do the super kick properly, needed to tune up the band first, right? So everyone's like, oh, he's gonna do it. Here's his tell, like we can all see.
Or Roman Reigns with the Superman punch. There's a reason why he runs up into it and makes it look super flashy, because you have to make that look impactful with a back elbow where you're already right in somebody's. They could just be hugging you and you could throw this elbow.
Right.
You can't really make that look impactful. The
Codebreaker isn't like that, but Codebreaker has enough movement with both parties in the move that like it does that on its own more or less.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's weird. I thought it was going to be a little bit different. I also thought this was like an AEW only thing.
Yeah, no, it's like his new thing to avoid falling on his back all the time, which okay.
And I understand that as him being a 45, 50-year-old guy, he can't take that bump too many more times.
It's not like he doesn't do the Codebreaker anymore, though. He does it multiple times a match and then does the lion salt. Like, he still does all the shit. He just also does this spinning back elbow that isn't really working for me right now.
If he had picked up if he wants to pick up a different finisher, sure, that's fine. Absolutely. The way that they made this out to be, the road to Double or Nothing and not even in those videos, but just as the time period, is that this was the new finisher because he can't really do the Codebreaker as much anymore. It's hurting him physically. Sure, absolutely makes sense, dude. You've been doing this for 30 years, but you still do it 17 times. What's the point here? This new finisher looks dumb because you can't go fast enough to make it look real.
It's just not really working for me. And even if he did make it go fast enough to make it look real, then I think it would be too fast to be a truly effective finishing move.
I mean, it would be a truly effective finishing move when he's knocking motherfuckers out, yes, but as a wrestling move, no, it wouldn't at all.
A truly a great finishing move has that pause in there where people go, oh, it's gonna happen, and then it happens,
Yes. We don't need more of the Goldberg situation.
Yeah, I mean, even Goldberg, he has to go and get down in the corner, right, before he does the...
Oh, I mean, even when he's doing, like, the jackknife, I mean, he picks the guy up and holds them.
Right.
And then he does, like, a 2 count, and then he slams them down. I just meant more of, you don't need to be knocking people out in the middle of the ring.
We're not going to
yourself.
talk about that match, okay?
You can't knock
We're not
yourself out.
going to talk about the match.
Well, my point was, like, people on jelly legs don't need to be in the ring.
We know. Jesus. The road to Fyter Fest number one.
This was shorter than I thought it would be, to be honest with you.
A lot shorter than I thought it would be, and there really wasn't a lot that happened in it. It was like one interview with Cody and then the thing with Mox. But luckily, the thing with Mox is pretty great.
He knows how to use a phone microphone.
Now,
terrible.
I'm going to try to I transcribed this. I'm going to try to read this, but as people who've listened to this show for a while know, reading transcribed Jon Moxley is
stupid hard.
Is super. He's just he's got a very interesting speaking style.
He does. He is very much up telling the unpredictable craziness factor and how he speaks, and it's just great.
Very stream of consciousness from Jon Moxley all the time.
It's great because you can watch his promo and you can tell he pretty much just pulled this out of his head.
And it's great.
Yeah.
It's legitimately one of the better promos I've heard in a very, very long time. And man, we got to talk about Jon Moxley after this. The episode opens with pieces of the original Fyter Fest ad. Cody introduces the event, praising it for its cross-promotional potential over a montage of footage from last year's CEO X New Japan Pro Wrestling show. Next, we cut to the Moxley promo. But I wanted to talk about this at first in that it's really crazy cool that they're doing this and that they're doing it. They're putting so much trust in Kenny to be a part of this thing, to bring it into this thing. And I think it's so smart of everybody to recognize the cross promotion here, to be like, okay, we're looking to get super passionate fans. Let's move into this other super passionate, super insular fan base and be like, hey, you can be a part of this thing too. It's like they said, we're going to go and find this other family and see if any of them want to be a part of this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, Cody made a really good statement talking about, like, you know, we're going to a fighting game tournament, which is pro wrestling.
Right.
Let's see if these guys like pro wrestling. I'm sure a lot of them do anyway. So this is kind of like a marriage made in heaven. And, you know, if you really look at it, like, especially of the current generation of wrestlers, a lot of them are gamers. They grew up playing games, you know, not necessarily fighting games, but, you know, Cody's a gigantic Zelda fan, you know, all of these things. So it's like, this is that kind of demographic. You're right up that alley for what you're looking to do. So it makes a lot of sense. It's a lot of cool stuff. And why not try and see if this works out? If it's an annual thing where it ends up being, you know, more of a house show every year, as opposed to like one of the tentpole events, cool, let's do it. You know, do a promotion and crossover as much as you can, because that's how you're going to build your audience up.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially with stuff like this, where you're moving into a meeting of only the super passionate about this thing. Right.
Yeah. It's not like they're just going to like, hey, we're going to go do a wrestling match at E3. That would not work.
Right. Or the wrestling, the NXT wrestling matches at the, what's that rock festivals. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always struck me as strange.
No, I mean, it's a great cross-promotional event, but like, people who go to the rock festival aren't going because they necessarily, you know, love rock and roll. They're going because they want to see a particular band or whatever. Like, it's a different kind of event than this is.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you did wrestling like at Bonnaroo, which is the multi-day thing where people are there the entire time, that would make sense. But like these rock festivals,
or like the fest down in Florida does wrestling.
Yeah,
right?
JR does a wrestling thing every year.
Right.
When you have that multiple day thing, it makes more sense because then you're not forcing someone to potentially miss the band that they came to see because they want to see a wrestling show.
Right. So Mox cuts this promo into his phone that's brilliantly acted and classically orated. John Moxley says, "What about what happened at Double or Nothing makes you think that I want to wait until July to step into the AEW ring for my first official match? That I just..."
Which right there says he's going to be wrestling at Fight for the Fallen.
Right. No, he hasn't been advertised there yet, but there he must be talking about Fight for the Fallen, right? Because
it's July. That's the only thing happening in July.
The only thing happening in July. So that must be happening unless he's mistaken, but I don't think that he would be.
He would have to be very mistaken, or he was mixing up the dates in his head when they planned this all out. I don't think that's the case. I'm pretty sure he's going to be at Fight for the Fallen as well.
No, right, because he's not talking about the Joey Janela. He can't be talking about Fyter Fest here because he's talking about it later in the promo. So he has to be talking about Fight for the Fallen.
He has to be talking about Fight for the Fallen because if it was August, those words aren't similar enough where you would mix up July and August. So yeah, he's gonna be at Fight. That's what my takeaway from this is. He's wrestling someone at Fight for the Fallen, and I imagine he's gonna jump on a plane immediately.
He continues that I just stroll back into the professional wrestling world. No, I Shawshank Redemptioned out of that bitch, and I have been on a full sprint ever since. So we're going to go fast, Joey Janela. Let's talk about that. He says he wants to die in the ring. Okay, I get it. But when the bad boy Joey Janela said this, John Moxley didn't exist in AEW. Things are different now. Now you're talking about a guy who doesn't have an off switch. You're talking about a guy that doesn't care if there are children in the audience. I don't care if your grandmother is in the audience. You're talking about a guy who doesn't necessarily care about the referee's discretion.
So that brought up a good point to me. Did Joey Janela wrestle a match where his grandmother was there? Or is this just a random poll?
I watched a documentary on YouTube about Joey Janela. Do you remember that video that surfaced a couple of years online where those dudes jumped off that roof into the back of that pickup truck through like a bunch of light tubes and barbed wire and shit?
Yes.
He was one of those dudes.
Okay, that's not surprising at all.
Yeah. So, and it was a documentary like surrounding that time. The bump was like super stupid. Like he still doesn't have feeling in one of his thumbs that almost got completely severed from the bump, right?
Most of Janela's bumps of things I've seen online are extremely stupid.
Yeah. So, that's his sort of background. For people that don't know Joey Janela,
he's a fucking crazy person.
You can find it on YouTube. He's just like, that's the world that he came out of, was that like wild CZW deathmatch thing. Yeah. He doesn't really do that to as much of an extent anymore, only because there's, short of pulling out a gun and shooting yourself in the face, like there's really nothing more you can do after you've jumped off a roof through, a contraption made out of light tubes and barbed wire in the back of a pickup truck. No, I just like he even says in the video, he's like, I peaked. There's no further down that road to go, and I don't want to go any further down that road. So
that's fair. I know he does the first time he did that spring break thing during WrestleMania weekend, he did do some crazy stuff, but nothing to that extent.
Right. And Mox kind of comes from that same CZW background, but not to that extent, really.
Yeah. And then he couldn't really do anything at this past spring break because he'd hurt himself.
Mox continues, when I get in the ring, when I step through the ropes and the bell rings, you're talking about a guy who doesn't necessarily care about the safety of the athlete. June 29th, Daytona Beach, at the Fyter Fest. Jon Moxley, Joey Janela. You're going to get it right now, quick, fast, in your face. Think of it like Amazon Prime for head trauma.
Dude, this is going to be worse than Hell of War.
I don't know, because like they built up the Joey Janela versus Hangman match, right? At All In was going to be, it's Joey Janela, so it's going to be crazy. It was fine on the crazy scale. You know what I mean?
But yeah, I will see. Yeah, but
the wildest thing they did was like a ladder bump, you know, which like fucking hurts. Like, don't get me wrong, it fucking hurts, but
yeah, but also, you know, Hangman's never really done hardcore matches.
Sure.
Both of these guys have and are full on insane.
And you know, Mox is just like any crazy idea that is presented to him, he's so starved from like he talked on Jericho about Brock shooting down like every crazy idea he had for their match. Like, I'm sure if they're like, yeah, man, do whatever you want, it's going to just be like years and years of like crazy stuff he's wanted to do.
That might honestly just be the worst thing that they could have told him. But yeah, that really probably is it. He's so pent up of all these things that he couldn't do. So now he's just being, you know, quote, freed. Whatever match he has at All Out, I'm guaranteeing it's going to be a Chicago street fight.
I mean, I would hope so. That when in Chicago, right, with Jon Moxley, I hope it's a street fight.
Yeah,
and I would hope it would be with Omega, but who knows?
I don't know about what that's going to be, but the stipulation is it's not going to be a regular match. It's going to be a Chicago street fight. If it's not, I would be so surprised.
Mox continues, when you sign that contract for June 29th, Joey, you become my enemy for the duration. So take it from me, from one guy who gives zero fucks to another. Choose your words carefully, my friend, and make sure you're sure that you want to become my enemy. Again, a great promo from Jon Moxley.
Absolutely, dude.
And if he continues to do stuff like this, I mean, what more can we say that we haven't already said on this show? This guy is going to be huge. I think the only star that makes him not the big star for this company for the next 5 years at least, although probably more than that. I mean, the guy is like basically in his wrestling prime, is Punk coming back. I think Punk coming back is the worst thing that can happen to Jon Moxley. I think otherwise he's the Stone Cold of this conflict.
And even then, that's still such a big if.
Sure.
Like,
and I'm not saying that it would kill him if Punk came back, but it wouldn't be the Jon Moxley show anymore. Like, it seems like it's going to kind of be.
Sure. But I mean, that's what I mean. The Punk thing, like, yeah, we do expect it to happen.
Sure.
It's still a gigantic if.
Right.
Because who the fuck knows what is going through Punk's mind?
Yeah.
He's saying he wants to keep doing UFC. He's got his ass fucking smoked twice. So I don't know, man. He may come back and do, like, I don't know, commentary. Who the fuck knows, man? But I think
you can lead a horse to water. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he could be the water boy. That'd be a great gimmick and just play up the full Adam Sandler character. But yeah, I mean, Moxley's got a place in this company. He's, like you said, he's in his prime. I really feel like the company is going to be him and Hangman and MJF. Those guys are going to be the top three guys because they're in their prime. More Hangman and MJF, they have more tread on the wheels than Moxley has, but man, they're setting themselves up to be the three guys who can really blow this thing out of the water.
I think they're definitely the three combustible Edisons. And it's really easy to draw the parallels, honestly.
It is. It really is.
Like Hangman's Triple H, right? Fucking Moxley is Stone Cold, and fucking MJF is Rock.
Yeah.
See, you've got the three right there, you know? Not to say every show needs those three characters, but it's pretty eerie that they have those three characters and you can be like, blip, blip, blip. You know?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I mean, and then you have, you know, Cody and the Bucks collaborating in that Vince role, which is the best way to do it because it's not just one guy, it's three minds working together.
Sure. Yeah, you've got this whole other thing happening, which is good. And I do like that they intend to, at least for the time being, keep the management babyface for the love of God. Stop. Just
please stop.
Just please stop making everybody who runs a wrestling company an evil guy. You know what I mean? And Lucha Underground did it for a while. Like, I wouldn't say Dario at any point was a heel. Dario for the fans,
was just fucking Dario
for the fans was a babyface. But for the wrestlers,
we loved all of his antics, while the actual wrestlers were like, "What the fuck cocaine dreams are you on, old man?"
Next, Cody tells us that it's demanding taking on this singles match between him and Darby Allin. In between two emotional matches with his brother Dustin, being the match at Double or Nothing with Dustin and the match at Fight for the Fallen with him and Dustin against the Bucks. Q then says that he's worried about Darby Allin's unorthodox offense and even more worried about what a loss to a debuting star like Darby Allin will do to Cody's psyche. Cody then,
I mean, not just his psyche, but it's a really good point of how that's going to factor in to the storytelling going forward. It's like, you got a guy who's a relative unknown to most of your crowd. He's going into his debut match because he wasn't in the Battle Royale, which we both thought he would be in. And, you know, you're taking on one of the essentially the faces of the company. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. I know you know a little bit more about Darby than I do, so I'm interested in the match. I think it'll be a fun match, but it's good. It's kind of a gigantic X factor in many different aspects.
Well, he doesn't want to go in to fight the Bucks with Dustin, where they're already undermatched on a loss. You know what I mean? That's not going to be good for the morale of the team. You know what I mean? Darby Allin is good in the ring. He's not the best at what he does. The Bucks are the best at what they do, right? So you don't want to go into that off a loss. I don't think it's fair for me to talk about Darby Allin. Darby Allin's a great wrestler. It's going to be a great wrestling match. He's kind of in the same place as, Jesus, and I'm drawing a blank on his fucking name. Jimmy Havoc. For me,
yes, that we talked about when Darby was initially announced that he's very much like Jimmy Havoc,
very close to Jimmy Havoc. They both have like goth gimmicks, which is just seems terribly melodramatic to me. But especially when you're an adult, you know, like it makes sense when you're 17, but like when you're an adult,
I mean, I like Jimmy Havoc's thing. It's not. I don't really see that so much as goth as just really.
His nickname is King of the Goths.
I mean, he's just kind of, to me, he's just like, you know, UK Satan.
Sure. But I think Darby is more than capable of having a great match with Cody. I've seen him steal the show on more than one occasion. So I have no problem with it. I'm excited for him to get new gear because the stuff he's been using on the indies is terrible. It's literally like Daisy Dukes that he made out of jeans with leggings under them,
and then some minor face paint,
and then the face paint that he uses, and then Doc Martens. Like it's very, it's like
fucking wrestling Docs.
It's like he went to a thrift store besides the Docs, which are expensive, although the ones that he wears are like beat as fuck. So I'm excited to see the sort of the new presentation of Darby Allin that this company can bring to him, because I think that's something that's missing from his presentation, is sort of a smart visual eye that he just doesn't have. Cody then tells us that he feels like a lot of people may have misinterpreted the throne break at Double or Nothing that they made a t-shirt of and are selling now.
Sweet t-shirt, man.
To him, he meant it to signify that he's not going to be an executive first and a wrestler second, but rather the opposite. Of course, the beauty of this moment is that the action can deliver on more than one level, right? But Cody has said this. I know Moxley said it in an interview that was Cody's intention, but then why do you make the throne look like a Triple H throne?
If they could have done a throne, fine, they could have done that. When the throne is almost entirely modeled and has every bit of I can't say that word, icons and
iconography.
Yes, that word. And images that Triple H has used for the past fucking 15 years.
Well, and you destroy it with a sledgehammer while your wife yells, break it down, right?
Yes. You can't sit here and say that this was not a shot at Triple H. It's got the Iron Cross on it. It's got the skulls on it. The sledgehammer that you pull out from under the ring. No, you can't.
Apparently they ran a Japanese promo this week where Triple H was sitting in a version they built of that throne.
Oh man, that'd be fucking money. I need to find that.
That he'd reforged the throne or whatever it was, right? Which
funny,
I'm sure
dude.
just set Russo off like, oh my god.
Probably just like came right in his pants as soon as he saw
I knew it. It was his throne the whole time.
Get that guy a tinfoil hat already,
fucking
man.
Shit. Yeah, like we said, slow news week, and we're going to close it up soon here. I don't really think there's much more for us to speak about this week. Maybe next week we'll finally get some more matches announced for Fyter Fest. Although I don't know how long this show's going to be. I don't know how I'm going to watch it other than through Bleacher Report Live. But for what price? Who knows? You know?
I really would not expect there to be much more added to this. This is going to be I feel like it's going to be a short thing. I don't think you may get one or two added to this because
it's a shame that this is the direct follow-up to
it kind of
Double
is.
or Nothing.
A little bit. But they may let's see, how many we have at Double or Nothing? We had like 7 or 8. We had 9 matches total, including pre-show. We already have 4 for Fyter Fest. You may get 1 more, and that's really going to be about it because this is going to be like a 2-hour show.
Yeah.
They're not going to, take too much of people's time to do this because, again, they're at the convention. They're doing other things. There's a lot of things going on. We do desperately need some things added to Fight for the Fallen. That's kind of becoming a tiny bit of an issue that there's only 3 matches announced.
Yeah, it's an issue that it's such a big question mark, but maybe they're holding off because they can't talk about some things yet.
And that's probably could be the case. It's just really the thing that's kind of troubling to me is that it's just the timing of how these 2 are happening, and one is 2 weeks after the other one.
Yeah, man.
Is that they have to announce now so that they have time to build.
Sure, but with the internet, 2 weeks is enough.
That's fair.
2 weeks is enough, man. Yeah. I mean that's the way so many things are going now. Like we're seeing it with E3 that's happening next week or tonight. Actually, some of these press conferences.
Microsoft's in a few hours.
Yeah, and Bethesda after that, and then Devolver Digital. Like people still get together and do this mostly because E3 is like owned by the video game lobby for America or whatever, right? Like that's why they continue to be people give a shit. When you could just put out a YouTube video at any time.
Which is exactly what AEW has done.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and I mean the fun thing now we've been seeing is that Cody will start going on Twitter and is like, "Hey guys, there's a video coming in like 2 hours. Be ready." And I love it every time. The best one though was the follow-up to Dustin where he posted the time and then he was fucking late.
Yeah, man, it's been great sticking with it, and hopefully we'll begin to see things pick up as people come back from various vacations and things, and we can see this road to Fyter Fest build. I wish this series was called The Road to Fight for the Fallen. because then
Other
we
than
could
the one episode we're gonna get.
we could kind of like build to that in the distance, and kind of like Fyter Fest is part of that. You know what I mean? But
I think what they could just do now, and I think they may have just painted themselves into too much of a square, but what they should have done from the first place has just been AEW The Road.
yeah, or just.
I mean, that right there, that would have been the perfect title.
Well, it's like everybody
just
talks about it being like Tuesday Night Dynamite or whatever it is, right? Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't just call it AEW Primetime Live or something like that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, just like this is the TV show instead of giving it this weird hokey 90s name.
Yeah, but I mean, you could. That's what I mean. Like, you could have just got AEW The Road, and then you don't have to retitle it every time. You just keep going, and then you're not necessarily. You don't have to just focus on one. You can just continually build angles for your different paths, because we both know once this one ends, if they do one for Fight for the Fallen, they probably won't have time.
Right.
To be honest with you, the title will change again to The Road to All Out.
Right.
They have about 6 to 8 weeks of time to build. They're going to put out a lot of episodes because they have a lot of angles to build, because again, they're building All Out to be a tentpole event. It's going to be another one of the 5-hour pay-per-views like Cody said. So they got a lot of stuff to build. It's not just going to be in BTE where they build all the angles like they did for All In, because they have more platforms now.
This is all wild speculation on our part at this point. But
yeah, and as we proved there from the scorecard game, we fucking suck at speculating.
like half right.
I beat you.
Well, by it. Okay. If we're gonna get there. Okay.
I beat you on the scorecards. I beat you in the pick'em. Fuck off.
I want to thank everyone so much for joining us on this wonderful journey that we're having podcasting about AEW. Want to thank our people over at tinyurl.com/seeing the elite even more in our Discord server. We're having the time of our lives over there with all of our friends from all over the world. It's been awesome.
Join us soon to see all the E3 talk that will be happening over the next 5 days.
On YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and podcast services everywhere. Subscribe, review, give us 5 stars while you still can, just like Meltzer, because it makes us feel how sweet, Jonathan?
Too sweet, buddy.
Too sweet. Of course. Facebook.com/Seeing the Elite if you want to stay updated, or get us on Twitter at Seeing the Elite. We've had some action on Twitter, which is nice. People talking about us on Twitter. And
did they say we suck?
No, thankfully.
It wasn't Twitter.
That's a different podcast. For Jonathan and I, thank you so much for joining us. Go out and change the world.